What just happened inside that courtroom will change everything. Blake Lively's lawyers didn't want this moment filmed, but I was there, and I saw it unfold in real time. The tension, the accusations, the silent reactions from the judge. This isn't just another hearing. This could be the turning point in a case that's spiraling out of control. And I'm about to tell you exactly what went down. I just walked out of that courtroom and the air still feels heavy, like the walls themselves were. Holding secrets too thick to breathe through the echoes of the arguments are still bouncing around in my head. And every step out of that hallway felt like crossing a line between what is said in whispers and what the world will finally hear. The FA. Cameras couldn't roll today. Not because we didn't want them to, but because the court ordered it. So what happened inside had to stay sealed at least for now. But trust me, the silence in that room was louder than anything I have heard all year. When the judge looked up from her notes the way she shifted in her chair, you could tell she was holding something back. Something she was still trying to weigh, and as my legal team sat beside me, I could feel the quiet hum of tension running beneath every heartbeat. This wasn't just another routine day in court. This was the moment where everything about this strange legal storm started to twist into something even more unpredictable. I saw Blake Lively's attorneys sitting across from us, their folders stacked like fortresses, their expressions carved with that mix of confidence and calculation that only comes from knowing they've turned every page 1,000 times before. But what they didn't expect was the resistance the way. My team stood their ground with calm precision, as if they had rehearsed every possible outcome before the hearing began. My lawyer, Jack, leaned forward, his voice low, measured, unshaken, and when he spoke, the courtroom shifted just slightly. Everyone could feel it. He told the judge exactly why this hearing mattered, that this wasn't just about one piece of paper or one line in a subpoena. It was about whether people who tell stories for the public, whether content creators, journalists, documentarians, anyone who gathers truth should have the right to protect their sources, their footage, their raw evidence from being pulled apart in a legal tug-of-war. Jack explained it perfectly, like a poker player reading the table telling us the court wasn't ready to rule yet, but there were telltale signs of what might be coming next. The judge didn't decide whether to cancel the subpoena, but the clues were there. She asked for something called a privilege log, and in that one request, the entire mood of the room changed, because that meant she was considering the privilege, that shield of protection that journalists rely on to keep the flow of information safe, to keep the truth from being buried. Jack leaned back and whispered that this was actually good news, a sign that the judge might be leaning toward our side, but it also meant the game wasn't over. Not yet. We would need to document every interview, every clip, every note without showing what was inside, just describing it, like labeling a locked box. The judge would review those labels later to see if they fit within the boundaries of privilege. And that's when it hit me how much longer this fight might go on. This wasn't just about one story anymore. It was about the right to keep reporting without fear of being dragged into someone else's legal maze. I could feel frustration rising in my chest, not because of what the court said, but because of how Blake's lawyers moved like shadows, twisting the narrative, inch by inch, trying to stretch time itself. Every time they delayed, every time they objected, every time they raised some new mystery claim, they kept the clock ticking longer. Because that's how this works. The longer the process lasts, the more it costs, the more it drains, the more it wears you down. But Jack reminded me this was their strategy to keep churning the file, to keep the machine moving, to make sure exhaustion sets in before justice does. And I knew he was right, because that's exactly how it felt sitting there, watching them speak with that faint half smile, as if this was a performance and the truth was just another prop they could rearrange at will. But what they didn't count on was that we're not backing down. Not after everything we've already been through. I looked at the judge one last time as she closed her notebook, her tone calm but firm. She said she would take the matter under advisement. She wanted to see the privilege log first before deciding what comes next. Her words sounded procedural, but there was something else there. Something in her eyes that told me she was thinking deeply about what this case represents. Not just for me, but for everyone who dares to speak out loud in an era where silence is easier. When we walked out into the corridor, I saw the camera crew waiting, their faces a mix of concern and curiosity. They had missed it all. But I told them the truth anyway, that this wasn't over, and maybe that's the most powerful thing to say right now, because the truth doesn't end with one hearing. It begins there. And even if they try to stretch this case out until every ounce of patience runs dry, we're still standing. And the next move is ours. As we stepped out of that courtroom, the sound of footsteps echoed down the marble hallway like faint reminders of the words that had just been said. The chill in the air felt sharper than before, and even though the cameras couldn't capture what had unfolded, the weight of it followed me like a shadow. My team surrounded me, Jack on one side, Dave on the other, and the documentary crew just behind us, all silent for a moment, trying to process what had just happened and what it all meant. The frustration still lingered, because for every step forward there seemed to be another wall waiting. But Jack reminded me that even walls can be climbed if you have the patience to find the cracks. He said this wasn't a loss. It was a setup for something bigger, that the judge's hesitation was not a rejection, but a signal that she was carefully charting her path. And as much as I wanted a clear decision today, maybe what we got was even better, a glimpse of fairness trying to find its place in a storm of paperwork and legal jargon. But the opposing side, oh, they played their part. Well, Blake's lawyers stood polished and practiced using vague language that seemed designed to confuse. They spoke with confidence about documents from last year, papers sealed away that no one else had seen, and when they hinted that they had proof that I had spoken to someone I never had in 2024, I could feel every nerve in my body tighten, because it wasn't just an accusation. It was a seed planted to make doubt grow. And that's the oldest trick in the book. You don't have to prove something. You just have to make it sound suspicious enough to slow the truth down. I glanced at the judge, then at their table, watching how they subtly moved each time they spoke, the rhythm of manipulation hidden in their tone. But Dave caught it too. He scribbled a note and slid it over to me, one line that said, "They are bluffing," and he was right. They were bluffing. They had nothing to show. And the fact that they claimed their proof was sealed made it even clearer, because sealed evidence that no one can see is the perfect illusion. You can hide behind it and make it look powerful even when it's empty. Still, the tension was real. The feeling of being gaslit by people who knew exactly what they were doing, trying to twist perception, not just for the judge, but for everyone in the room, to make me doubt my own memory, to make me feel cornered. I could almost hear the echo of their strategy in my mind. They don't have to win the case. They just have to make you tired enough to stop fighting. That's the game, and I wasn't going to play it. Jack leaned forward during a brief recess, whispering that the judge's request for the privilege log might be her way of setting up a bigger defense for us, that if we handled it carefully, it could be the very thing that protects our rights in the long run. So while it felt like more work, it was a sign of progress. We would list everything, the interviews, the footage, the private notes, but without revealing what they contained, and when that list hit the judge's desk, it would tell its own story. A quiet one, but powerful, because every item on it would represent a piece of truth that someone tried to suppress. And that's what this has always been about. Not headlines, not views, not drama, but truth, and the right to tell it even when it's inconvenient. The lawyers across from us may have smiled when they heard. The hearing wasn't ending today, but that smile will fade when they realize what comes next. Because if the judge sides with us and recognizes the journalistic privilege, then every move they've made to stretch this out will turn back on them. Every delay, every accusation, every subtle twist will become evidence of their own tactics. And that's why I kept my calm. Even when they tried to throw me off balance, they talked about recordings that didn't exist. They spoke about statements taken out of context. They called me a content creator one moment and a journalist the next, depending on what worked best for their argument. But here's the irony in their own filings. They listed me alongside actual journalists, naming outlets and reporters in the same breath, while conveniently leaving out others who are purely content creators, meaning they recognize the work we were doing for what it is: investigative storytelling, documenting a case that the public deserves to understand. They can't rewrite that now, not without contradicting themselves completely. So when Dave filed that request for judicial notice, pulling court documents from New York and connecting all the missing dots, it was like lighting a match in a dark tunnel. He had spent hours searching through sealed filings hidden within other filings, like a maze of redactions and misdirection. But he found enough to show that Blake's team had opportunities to request information from the actual defendants in this case, and chose not to. Instead, they targeted us, a third party with no reason to be dragged into this fight except to make noise, to intimidate, to stall. Dave laid it out perfectly in front of the judge, showing that if the other side truly believed we had information relevant to their claim, they should have asked for it months ago. But they didn't, because they know it doesn't exist, and that silence spoke volumes as the hearing drew toward its close. The judge paused before speaking, her words deliberate, measured. She said she would review everything before making a decision. And in that moment, I could feel the shift, the sense that she wasn't convinced by their performance, that she saw through at least part of the illusion, and that maybe justice would take the slower road, but it would still arrive when we left the courtroom. The crew caught up with me again, cameras ready, but still unable to record inside. I turned to them and said, "It's a B+, not a win, not a loss." Just a reminder that this story isn't finished yet, and the next chapter might be the one that finally turns the tide. When I finally stepped outside into the open air, it felt like the pressure of that courtroom was still clinging. To me, the echoes of every word still bouncing inside my head. And even though it wasn't the ending I had hoped for, it wasn't defeat either. It was a pause, a moment suspended between truth and outcome. This story isn't over. And maybe that's exactly what makes it so powerful. The judge didn't shut us down. She didn't silence the voices that have worked so hard to uncover the truth. She simply asked for clarity. And that's something we can deliver, because everything we've done has been rooted in honesty and transparency, in showing the world what's happening behind the curtain. I know the other side wants exhaustion to win. They want the slow drip of paperwork and endless hearings to drain the will to fight. But they've underestimated something much stronger: resilience. We've built this from the ground up. Every late night, every document reviewed, every piece of footage, every word spoken, all of it has led to this moment where silence isn't an option anymore. I'm frustrated, yes, but I'm also focused, because every attempt to delay is just another confirmation that they're afraid of what could come out next. So we'll keep going. We'll keep documenting. We'll keep standing up for the right to tell the truth without fear, because the truth doesn't fade. It waits, and sooner or later, it always finds its way through the noise. This may not have been the victory day I wanted, but it's the foundation of something far bigger. And the next time we walk into that courtroom, we won't just be defending ourselves. We'll be defending the principle that the truth is worth protecting, no matter how long it takes.